I'd like to speak about the Biosphere. Glorious day today. So the Biosphere is a notion that Teilhard de Chardin came up with, and essentially it's the idea that in the future there would be a sort of mental awareness that transcends the individual. He spoke about this in, among other books, The Future of Man. And in The Future of Man he also talked about, the only way that this could really be stopped was to seal off within the awareness this as an impossibility. So the kind of idea was that by keeping this as an open possibility, we were actually manifesting it to a large extent. Now, I'm going to correlate this to some extent with a somewhat Wilberian notion, who I owe much to. And so Wilber has this idea of quadrants, and I've spoke about an idea called quadratic development. Quadratic development is the idea that we move through a primary focus of awareness, from subjectivity to intersubjectivity to objectivity to interobjectivity, or I to we to it to its. But I'm going to try to clarify what I mean by that a little bit. You can look back at my videos to get more clarification perhaps. But the idea is that, for example, reptiles, or even earlier life, would have a primarily subjective perspective on life, and that correlates with the reptilian brainstem, and the mammals have a intersubjective perspective, which is emotional. That is, they can care for another, but they have to go through subjectivity of that intersubjective space. So they have a primary focus of subjectivity within early mammals. That is, they kind of would be like a narcissistic intersubjective being, and then later mammals would have sort of more of a intersubjective proper sort of expression. And then the latest of the mammals, I believe, would be sort of showing more signs of actual self-awareness, as we see with some of the higher primates. And then when you get into the human realm, we too would have developed through it within a self-aware space through subjectivity to intersubjectivity to objectivity, where within the Enlightenment we see objectivity proper sort of arise, the orange space, intersubjectivity, amber space, and subjectivity sort of the red space. And then the transitional period would sort of be the purple, or infrared, Wilberian system. So you have this progress, but the green space is interesting because it would be something like interobjectivity. Now, although I totally believe that this is a reality, I think we're in great debt for Wilber seeing this. I think that there's a little bit of I'm not going to say problem, but there's a peculiarity in that nature, and that is that at this time there's still no subjectivity within an intersubjectivity. So notice that, for example, within the other three major domains, I, we, and it, if you consider it objectivity, there's still a subject involved. Whereas interobjectivity, you might argue there is, but there isn't really a good expression of that interobjectivity yet. Now, what I'm going to argue for here is that the Biosphere is actually that expression of interobjectivity. So that with the coming together of the computing world and our deepening interconnectivity as people, we're actually co-creating the Biosphere in this process. And this Biosphere is actually really a radical interobjective space where individuals through objects are manifesting higher levels of intelligence. Now notice that this too carries with it the autonomy of individuality, but an autonomy that's expressed through deeper relations but transmitted through objects. So we have going, the first step of this would be, again, sort of more of subjective intersubjectivity. Then you'd have sort of a intersubjective interobjectivity, then a objective interobjectivity, then an interobjective interobjectivity. And then you'd probably have the emergence of something new come on the horizon, and that would be manifested after this. I think it would come with it something like time would be construed potentially too, because I haven't quite figured this out, but someone smarter than I might. But I think it would come with interesting time implications anyways. I'll leave it at that. Temporal implications. I hope that made sense. It's the manufacturing of deeper autonomy through objects, but that autonomy is in deep relation with a new sense of communion, because in the Wilberian and spiral dynamic system, interobjectivity is a relational space, whereas objectivity is a subjective space, or not subjective, but objective, but personal or individuated. So it's a swing back to communion on a meta phase level, sort of. So this is arguing for a pattern, a meta pattern on sort of spiral dynamics. So I'll leave it at that. Blessings.